Hey everybody, weekly word 175 is legacy. Behind me is a quilt that our friend Bridget made for Ainsley. Bridget was a student of mine years ago and now is a lieutenant colonel in the Space Force. And she sent this quilt to us. It was all of Ainsley's shirts from her races that she participated in. And of note is the one she earned 15 years ago this week when she became a T-Point Virginia Beach athlete. And of course she did that at the Surfers Healing. Well, this past weekend was the 15th anniversary of that event, the Surfers Healing 5K, where I first got to see Ainsley's face light up. I talk about this in great detail in the ASICS video that's pinned to my Instagram page as well as my Facebook page. If you haven't seen it, please give it 4 minutes of your time. It really speaks to the power of Ainsley's energy and frankly her legacy. Our family went to Camp Magic. I've talked about the acronym of MAGIC many times over the years, specifically in a weekly word episode too. My act of grieving instills courage is what it stands for. And Edmark had this camp that we went to. Edmark's an organization, one of probably one or two, maybe the only one in the United States that provides hospice for families and for pediatrics. Well, our family went there, and this past weekend, Briley volunteered to go back to Camp Magic. After college, after years of reflection, and, frankly, with an eye towards entering counseling and social work after her gap year in France. Well, she went there and was a facilitator to 8 to 10-year-olds, and she did a whole lot of reflection, just like our whole family did, frankly, this weekend. We actually heard from Camden, too, for the first time. We got a 5-minute phone call, which was really special Saturday night. Where am I going with all this? Legacy. I've talked about it. Gosh, we even had Ryan Mannion come on in the Together We Shall podcast. She's the TMF president, Travis Mannion's sister. And she talked about legacy and how they chose to serve in order to celebrate the legacy of Travis and how that service has helped them grieve his passing. Well, anyway, Briley sent a letter to Ainsley this weekend. And by sending it, it means that she wrote the letter, and then they had a campfire event where they all burned the letters. Well, before burning the letter, she sent a copy of it to me and Lori, and whenever Lori read it aloud, there was one passage in it that just struck me. And it speaks to this idea of legacy in such a beautiful way. It said, "The power of your legacy helps me transcend grief." When I heard that come out of Lori's mouth, from Briley's letter to Ainsley, it just hit me so hard because it speaks to what I truly mean when I say I have the honor of being the president of my daughter's legacy as the president of Ainsley's Angels. The fact that Ainsley's legacy and the power of that legacy helps me, helps Briley, helps those that loved Ainsley and knew Ainsley transcend her grief. Like, such a powerful sentence and so succinct. Like, we can reflect upon loss. We can connect with others who have lost. We can serve communities. But it's when we get to a point where there's a legacy that becomes so much more powerful in a beautiful, loving way that is so much beyond any one of us, that legacy, it transcends the grief. It got me to thinking, though, like, what is your legacy and how will people honor you when you die? In other words, when you're gone, how is the strength of your legacy going to transcend their grief? Because we can sit in our grief, and I think there's power to that. I know I've sat in my grief and felt the grief and the sorrow and the pain of the grief. But when through service and through power of legacy, we're able to celebrate someone and serve someone in such a way that it transcends the grief. Oh, man. So I guess I'll just leave this with, what is your legacy? And how will that legacy help others grieve? More specifically, how will that legacy transcend the grief that people have for you when you are gone? 175 weekly word legacy. Wow.